A while back, I made a video where I ruined Warrior Cat ships. Like all series that I do on this channel, I decided to remake that video with Wings of Fire. So I asked all of you what your favorite Wings of Fire ships are, only to ruin them for you forever. Just a reminder that this is a semi-satirical video. I ship some of the stuff that I'm ruining, and I don't support some of the more questionable ships that people commented for me to make fun of. Now, let's begin with Thorn x Smolder. First of all, I'm not the first one to point out the age gap here. Smolder is 40 years old. Thorn is 20. He is literally twice her age. If that isn't bad enough, Onyx, his daughter, is the same age as Thorn. Onyx doesn't respect Thorn as queen, and she never would respect her as a stepmother either. Second of all, it kinda defeats the purpose of Thorn being a queen from non-royal blood if she goes ahead and marries into a royal bloodline a few years later. I mean, at least it ensures that the Sandwing royal line isn't inbred, but it's still continuing on the regular Sandwing royal line. Kinkajou x Moon. Due to what happens on Nightwing Island, Kinkajou hates all Nightwings. Moonwatcher is the one exception, as she was not raised with other Nightwings, as stated by Kinkajou herself, so she doesn't hold her heritage against her. So it's Kinkajou x the one Nightwing that she doesn't hate. What could go wrong? Well, Moonwatcher already feels isolated from the other Nightwings, because she was raised alone in the rainforest, and she has powers that haven't been seen in millennia. Hearing constantly from Kinkajou about how bad the Nightwings are and how she isn't really a Nightwing would drive her even further away from reconnecting to her tribe. Peril x Clay. I already have a full 20-minute video on why I think Clairol isn't the best ship with Peril's current mental state. But to sum it up briefly, Peril is not a pillar of emotional stability. Her entire life she was abused and used by the dragons around her, and made to feel like a monster. Of course she falls in love with the first dragon to treat her like, well, a dragon, and that causes her to be a bit obsessive. Because of that, she views Clay as her moral compass. While it is good that Clay can be Peril's rock, that can also lead to her to idealize him. If they got together, it could lead Clay to become an emotional crutch for Peril's issues. Though the two can certainly work together, and do in some futures, Peril definitely has a lot of emotional work to do to earn herself a man like Clay. Whiteout x Thoughtful. The night that the two met, Thoughtful was on a date with Listener. At least, Listener was convinced that she was on a date with Thoughtful. However, after a brief conversation with Whiteout, he instantly falls in love with her. That shows the level of disloyalty towards partners, even if Listener was only imagining that her and Thoughtful had something together, and he may cheat on Whiteout. Whiteout, likewise, is not innocent. Growing up, Listener bullied her and outcast her, like the other Nightwings did. When she saw Listener on a date, maybe she chose to steal Listener's man as some sort of revenge, and she doesn't truly care about Thoughtful. Sunny x Sky. I can see what people are going for here. Sunny character x Sunny character, quite literally when it comes to Sunny. However, what people fail to get is that Sunny actually has some depth to her. She is a very optimistic dragon, but that is despite all the darkness that goes on around her. And she isn't blind to that darkness, she knows it exists. She just thinks that the world can be better, and is determined to make it better herself. Sky, on the other paw, has none of that depth. If you grabbed him by the head and shook him, you'd hear a little thing rattling around in his skull. That would be his brain, and it is the size of a peanut. He is blind to the darkness that goes on around him, and he literally gets himself captured in possibility. Sunny at least got captured on purpose in the Scorpion Den, and she was able to escape her captors pretty fast when it came to Fierce Teeth. Sky is not as clever as Sunny. Sky is the character that Sunny haters think that Sunny is. I don't think that we should sentence her to be in a relationship with him. Next up, prepare yourself for intense deja vu, for I am going to be covering the same 3 dragons rearranged into 4 different ships, each with their own reasons on why they absolutely suck. Moon x Winter. I have an entire video dedicated to why Winter Watcher was never going to work out for the both of the dragons involved. Let me discuss it here in brief. In the first 2 weeks of them knowing each other, Winter was racist towards Moon's entire tribe. He accused her of committing terrorism and said he would tell everyone if she didn't find out who was really behind it. And also, he looked down on her because of her powers. Then, in the 2 months after that, Moon became friends with a dragon who hated Winter's entire tribe. She didn't listen to Winter when he tried to warn her about Darkstalker's genocidal ways, and demonized him for being mad when Darkstalker almost destroyed his tribe. She blatantly doesn't trust him in the epilogue because he felt angry. Winter Watcher fans often boil the relationship down to Winter being a bad boy and Moon being a good girl, which is a complete misread of their dynamic. I mean, have you even read Winter Turning? Moon x Qibli. Let's be real, no one shipped Moonblee before Darkness of Dragons came out. No one roots for the good guy in the love triangle because it is boring, and people always root for the perceived bad boy, and Wings of Fire is no exception. I don't know how I got this impression, but Moonblee fans tend to be a bit sanctimonious. Maybe that's because their ship became canon against all odds, so they got a bit of an ego over that. If there's one thing that Moon and Qibli are united in, it is in completely losing their personalities in Flames of Hope. People joke about characters being more shallow outside our books, but Flames of Hope was just abhorrent in that regard. But this isn't yet another roasting Arc 3's writing choices video, it's a ship video. So let's move on to the one you've all been waiting for. If you weren't able to guess it, we have Kiinter, or if you were living under a rock like the Dragoness of Destiny were, Qibli x Winter. Kiinter fans should know the characters' dynamics the best, but in reality they tend to simplify their relationship. They make it into a stereotypical Sunny x Grumpy ship, or just make it into Qibli annoying Winter with him getting flustered. So they ruin their own ship, and it doesn't help that Kiinter fans historically have been the most annoying fans in the entire fandom. I'm not as involved in Wings of Fire communities as I used to be, but back during Arc 2's release and the beginning of Arc 3, I thought I was living in Iowa because Kiinter fans were acting like some cornballs. They tend to get pretty aggressive over people who don't like their ship. All in all, it's not every Kiinter fan, but if you see someone who's annoying in the Wings of Fire fandom, chances are they like Kiinter. The worst part of this is that there's an obvious fanfic idea that no one has written. In Darkness of Dragons, Vulture says that an arranged marriage between Qibli and Winter would be beneficial to business. Now, what if it became canon? Either Qibli never leaves Vulture, and the two of them get married that way, or maybe Winter's already considered expendable by Icewings, and Qibli's under control of Vulture at that point in the series, so they get married in Darkness of Dragons. Arranged marriage is literally one of the largest fanfiction tropes to exist. Someone better write this before I finally man up and do it myself. Finally, we have Qibli x Winter x also Moon. First of all the issues I had with Kiinter apply to the ship. That is because most of the people who claim to ship the ship don't. They just got accused of mischaracterizing Moon in order to push her out of Winter and Qibli's life, and decide to add her into the relationship so people would stop yelling at them for it. But is Moon's part of the trio ever explored? No. If it is, it turns her into a mom who has to look after two bickering toddlers named Winter and Qibli, with no ambitions outside of them. Aside from Moon, even after all of his character development, I don't think Winter would ever want to share a partner. He's a bit protective and insecure, and I feel like he'd be afraid that he'd be kicked out of a polycule if he was ever in one, just like how he was kicked out of his family and the Ice Kingdom. Now we are down to our final ship, Starflight x Fatespeaker. Starflight never showed any interest in Fatespeaker before Sunny rejected him. For his entire book, he kept on thinking about Sunny in a romantic way, and never once thought about Fatespeaker in the same way. Then, only after Sunny finally rejected him, Starflight finally started to consider Fatespeaker as a romantic partner. Literally the paragraph after he gets rejected, he says his feelings for Fatespeaker and Sunny could not be the same. Like, wow. The change happened pretty fast. Maybe that's because Fatespeaker is so similar to Sunny that he can just mentally substitute her for Sunny. He does say earlier in the novel that she had something so close to the way Sunny would say it that he couldn't refuse her words. So I think Fatespeaker is just a rebound for him, and she deserves better. Now it is time for the Roundup, where I have a lot of ships that I've come to dislike, all for the same reason. I want you to guess what that reason is before I say it. For the ships I have not talked about yet, we've Lynx x Snowfall, Willow x Sundew, Blaze x Glacier, and Anemone x Tamarin. And from the ships I've already discussed, Peril x Clay and Qibli x Winter also fall into this trap. If you haven't guessed it, within this fandom, literally every single ship gets boiled down into the same dynamic. Golden Retriever x Black Cat, or Sunny x Grumpy, whatever you'd like to describe it as. While this dynamic can be fun, oftentimes fans reduce the characters to just being grumpy or just being sunshine, while ignoring any other personality traits. For example, even though Willow is an optimistic character, she is also very determined and was not afraid to kill Hawthorn. People often erase that side of her. I understand that it's easier to put your favorite ships into memes and comics if it's closer to being a common cliche against different medias, but at one point does something stop becoming a ship and start becoming a trope slop? In my opinion, all these ships have become slop within the fandom due to people boiling down the characters into 2 traits. And so those are all the ships that I decided to talk about today. What are your opinions on the ships? Are there any other ships you'd like to see utterly ruined? Comment them down below. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. I make animal fiction videos pretty often, and your support would mean a lot to me. And to those who are already subscribed, thank you so much for your continued support. I wouldn't have gotten here without y'all. Peace, Rogan out.